So the first observation here is that there was not found helper as his partner. And I think that's an interesting phrase. There was not, amongst all of God's creation, there was no one like Adam, no one like the first man. And God intentionally left Eve out of the picture at the beginning, I think. And again, this is an opinion. I think so that Adam would understand the need for his counterpart. And this woman was created out of him, and that is given as the reason that the two shall cling together. Because she came from him, they are partners, supposed to be. Partners in life. And we talked about this last week, the idea of a man leaving his father and mother and clinging to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. The only appropriate partner for the man was the woman. And it's a very simple equation. Now, obviously, as you go through history, the Bible makes that simple equation much more complicated. Much more complicated because of sin and humanity and history and all of those things, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But first, we are taking direct issue with the statement in this article that says, no one wants their marriage or anyone else's to look in its particulars anything like what the Bible describes. And let's give you a further description of how the Bible describes a marriage ought to work.
That's found in Ephesians 5:25 through 31. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, in order to make her holy by cleansing her with the washing of water by the word, so as to present the church to himself in splendor, without a spot or wrinkle, or anything of the kind, yes, so that she may be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as they do their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hates his own body, but he nourishes and tenderly cares for it, just as Christ does for the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one flesh.
And Jonathan, here, that word for love in those verses is that selfless love, that Greek word agape love, that is willing to give and is not interested in itself.
Or receiving anything in return.
So the basis of marriage, according to Ephesians, is this giving, this pouring out. And the example used is Christ's love for his church. And he died for them. So, that's the basis of what the Bible describes as marriage. Now, look, I don't know about you, but I want my marriage to look like that. Mm-hmm. I want to be like that. That, to me, when I grow up, that's what I want to be. That's something I think this is so important here. A few more scriptures.
Matthew 19, verse 6. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder.
So these are Jesus' words, and he is building upon the original statement in Genesis. And he's saying what God has joined together, we should not be taking apart. And again, I don't know about you, but that's what I want my marriage to look like. Something that is so strong in its commitment and its bond that it becomes unbreakable through life.
It's solid.
Right. Okay, let's go on to the next scripture.
All right.
I said we're going to be calm and cool and collected, and I will be. I promise.
1 Corinthians 7, 3 through 5. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
So there is even some education in terms of sexuality in the New Testament, and it's saying that you belong to one another. And again, to me, that's a signal of what a marriage ought to look like. Next one.
1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful, or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
And again, that's a chapter on love in general, but it's the same kind of love that was applied to marriage in Ephesians. So one more scripture before the break.
Hebrews 13:4, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral.
So, Jonathan, these scriptures give us a sense of biblical description of what marriage ought to look like. So the first question you have to ask yourself, is that what you want your marriage to look like and marriage to look like in general?